Having everything at your fingertips has made movies feel like nothing. It was a time when owning a VHS or a DVD collection actually meant something. You didn't just mindlessly scroll through endless choices. And when you finally got your hands on a copy of Blade Runner or The Godfather, you actually watched it. Now, you've got every movie ever made in your pocket, and somehow it feels less exciting. Physical media is dying. Disney just stopped selling DVDs in Australia altogether. And the sick truth is, you never truly own the movies you buy through streaming platforms. One change in licensing, one rights dispute, or the wrong person getting cancelled, and just like that, your favourite film's gone like it never existed.
If you buy a 4K UHD, you buy a Blu-ray, it's on your shelf, it's yours. No company, is going to break into your house and take it from you and repossess it. It's yours and you own it. That's never really the case with any form of digital distribution. You're relying on the continued health of the supplier, the company who's supplying it, with filmmakers who have made successful films that have gone, for streaming sites, that have been taken off those sites and don't exist in any form. There's no control. And so even from a consumer point of view, and it's scary for filmmakers who don't have that release right now, and it's going to be an increasingly big issue for filmmakers, and it's something we're going to have to address with the streamers at some point.
I don't know what it is with the streaming services now, especially Disney. I've said that I'm not a big Marvel fan. Latest one with all the Spider-Man turn up. In my opinion, it's just gimmick after gimmick. Obviously the nerds are going to be like, oh, there's Tobey Maguire and there's, Andrew Garfield. But I was like, come on, man. And even Deadpool 2, I didn't particularly like it.
As a product, it's fucking amazing. Don't get me wrong. Everyone's trying to build a universe now, but no one's really pulled it off. No one's really done it well. The Monsterverse was shit. All the films were shit. DC's just a mess. I rate Gunn, who's taken them over. And it'd be very interesting to see if he can pull it all together. Although that new Superman looks a little ropey. I don't know about that. But no one's done it like Marvel have done it. And it's so impressive. But firstly, there's so many films, so there's always going to be a feeling like it's oversaturated. There's too many of them. But the quality of the films has fallen off. After Endgame, they kind of were now we got Black Captain America. And how about this guy that only really, really, really avid comic book readers have ever heard of? The rest of the film industry is suffering in the sense of the kind of films that are getting made because of illegal streams and then people not going to the cinemas as much and, movies getting released really early. Saying that, it's still an interesting time for films, but you don't get those $40-50 million budget chance-taking movies. The only example I could even think of recently was Joker, but that's still a comic book movie. But, those mid-range films where they take a chance, they do something different. And also there is that feeling of they've become too good at it. It's too much of a product now. Disney, like you said, they bought Marvel, but they went out and bought loads of franchises, bought Star Wars, and they already have their back catalogue of Disney stuff they can fall back on. So when they launched Disney Plus, they were like, original? We don't need to do anything original. Like in Luke Skywalker's cousin opened up an antique shop. Let's do a 6-part miniseries on that and throw 100 million at it. Jar Jar Binks renovating his apartment. Let's fucking film that for 6 episodes. It's just dog shit. Also, the fact that they went woke with it as well. It's just what are you doing? No one wants to see that shit, especially not in drama or content. So I'm delighted that they're suffering.
It's very sad. And it's not just out of nostalgia. All right, so you go down the list and you hit there and you watch something or you tape something and maybe you never get around to watching it or you actually do watch it. And then maybe you watch it for 10 minutes or 20 minutes and you maybe start doing something else. Nah, I'm not really into this. And then that's kind of where we've kind of fallen into. However, there was a different quality to the video store. You went down to the video store, you looked around, you picked up boxes, you read the back of the boxes, you made a choice, and maybe you talked to the guy behind the counter, and maybe he pointed you to something. And he didn't just put something in your hand, he kind of gave you a little bit of a sales pitch on it to some degree or another. And so the point being is, you were kind of invested in a way that you're not invested with this electronic technology when it comes to the movies. You chose that film. Now, yeah, of course, we all rented 3 movies and didn't get around to watching the 3rd one, but there was there was more of a commitment, and that's what's really lost. And so, in a weird way, what's lost is commitment.
Have you ever spent more time picking a movie than actually watching one? That's not a coincidence. Streaming services figured out that giving you a never-ending list of recommended content actually makes you less likely to decide. It's called choice paralysis. Back in the day, you went to the video store, picked something, and that was your night. Now, you spend 40 minutes scrolling through Netflix, second guessing your choices. Start something, quit after 10 minutes, and doom scroll Twitter instead. The worst part, these platforms don't want you to watch great movies. They want to keep you looking for them. More time searching equals more time on their servers, just stuck in a digital hamster wheel.
So every so often I will still buy Blu-rays because I'm one of these guys with anything really. Like obviously I have an iPod and I have a phone, and that kind of killed buying actual CDs to just have it in your pocket. So music isn't really one, but I would always buy a physical book over the... I've never liked Kindles, never liked them. I like having it, I like holding it. If I want to reread it again, I can just pick it up from the shelf.
The smell and the touch of it as well.
All that stuff, you know, contributes to it. So I bought a few Blu-rays recently, so I'm trying to remember what I bought. So I bought The Holdovers. We saw that in the cinema, and I love that director of Sideways. And I bought Civil War, and I watched it because I never saw it in the cinema, by the way. A couple of days later it came out on a streaming service. I can't remember the exact one. I was there with my Blu-ray, which I paid like £20 for, and thinking, fuck's sake, man, like I pay for this streaming service anyway. By the way, I thought it was a bit shit.
Civil War.
Yeah, I didn't.
It was alright, yeah.
It was okay.
It was undercooked a bit.
Oh, it's very undercooked. Good idea, very good idea, but it's just annoyed me. And Disney do it all the time with Marvel, by the way. You'll go and see a Marvel film, then 3 days later it'll be on Disney Plus. And even Sky, because they have this thing where you can pay like £14, and the advert will specifically be, catch this film now while it's still in the cinema. That's the gimmick of it. And I found myself getting very wound up, thinking that streaming services could be killing the cinemas. Not even the big chains, I'm talking like independents even. I saw a piece from the COO of Pixar that basically came out and said, I don't think Soul gets enough love, or people don't talk about it in the pantheon of Wall-E and fucking Monsters Inc. and, you know, Toy Story, because it didn't get a theatrical release. And I was thinking, is streaming and the speed which it is being released to homes stopping people from going to the cinema? Because they're like, do you know what? Pay for a streaming service anyway. If I go cinema, my kid will probably want popcorn and Coke that costs me another 30 quid, and a bag of Galaxy Minstrels which cost £7. Why don't I just wait and watch it from the comfort of my home?
The thing with Soul, I actually thought it was pretty interesting, and I like that they were trying to do something quite different. But at the same time, partly I think it's like, you got to remember, I like kids' movies that take kids seriously and can go deep, be a bit scary, deal with death, deal with ideas, but it's still a kids movie. You know, I feel like they nearly forgot this was supposed to be a kids movie. You know, jazz and a weird narrative where the first 40 minutes is completely different than to the following 40 minutes, and it's a hard sell for kids. But he probably is onto something with the fact that films in the cinema, it's an event, and we're losing those kind of events. Like, even remember with TV obviously died a lot quicker, and no one really cares as much because it doesn't really have that same feeling of magic that you'd remember, and we still essentially watch in the same way with our friends or with your bird, or, you know, we get to binge watch things, but that was already coming in with DVD box sets and stuff. But do you remember when you were a kid and you would watch some wacky documentary on Channel 5 of like the man with 9 heads and whatever, and you'd come in the morning and you'd just speak to your friends and be like, did you see that last night? Or you'd speak to them on the playground, did you see that new Louis Theroux documentary? And it was a thing that you had to be there for, and we lost that now. You kind of all watch the same thing at once if there's a Tiger King or a Squid Games that takes over the world for 5 minutes, but otherwise it just comes and goes, and everyone's saying, have you seen this thing on Apple TV? And you're like, oh no, I've got like 11 things to watch on all the other platforms that supposedly I should watch. There's so much content, but it's becoming less social, and it's the same with movies. You know, going to see a film, especially like a comedy or a horror or a film that is just so amazing, you know, it's so good that everyone's kind of like just fucking sitting in their seats as the credits are rolling, not wanting to get up yet, still digesting it. And you're losing that, because if a film that's a bit of a chance taker, you know, lower budget, not your obvious popcorn action, easy to sell flick, is in the cinema and it's not doing great for a week or two, there's probably a Marvel film that they can just throw into more screens and be like, oh, it's fine. And then, like you said, those distributors look round and say, like, we're not doing great. These cinemas are starting to pull some of our screens. Netflix and Prime are coming with a couple of lowball offers. Should we just cut our losses and hand it over to them? But the problem is there's always films that don't do well, but you have to find out if they don't do well. And we're not even getting to find that out. 2001 A Space Odyssey was about to get pulled from screens because it was doing awful in the States. No one was going to see it. People that owned the cinemas started saying, like, give it a second, actually. We're starting to notice groups trickle in and there seems to be more every time. It started with the hippies coming in being like, let's drop acid and see this trippy fucking film. But then it was also word of mouth and it became this big thing. And you hear stories of Tom Cruise talking about being a little kid and his earliest memory of any film was in this packed out cinema seeing 2001 and saying what a crazy event it was. And he can still remember some of the people that were sitting nearby him on the looks on their faces. And he's a big one who pushes, you know, Mission Impossibles and all his films have to have a big long cinema release. He's not doing any of this streaming bollocks because he believes in it as well. That wouldn't happen today. You wouldn't get a chance to find out that a film actually is a bit of a late bloomer. Not every film's going to hit with a great box office window right from the get-go. I don't like seeing movies available on streaming. Weirdly, kind of annoys me when it's available for streaming after 2 weeks and I don't have to pay for it, which shouldn't make sense, but it's kind of like, fuck, man. Like, TV, even the best TV feels a bit disposable unless you're talking about the absolute Mount Rushmore, biggest guys, like best TV shows, top tier. But films are supposed to be special, even the shite ones. Even when you end up fucking up and going to see a bad film, it's like, that was a bad film. You remember that was a bad film. Like, it's a more profound bad experience than it would be watching a half-hour show and being like, this is shit. And it's just losing that because of this.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Because obviously we have a membership to a cinema chain. Obviously, I'm not going to name it.
Why not? Everyman. It's great. I love Everyman.
Yeah, Everyman. But I feel like you hit the nail on the head. You know, we're busy during the week with work. Let's tell the truth, Declan. Like, after doing 8 hours of work a day, trying to chill now, really can't be asked to go to cinema. And I feel like if you don't go and see the films within the first week, they're gone now. Whereas they used to run for weeks and weeks on end. You might have to look at it and see what films that you don't think are going to do good and have a long run in the cinema and be like, Declan, I don't think this will be in the cinema for that long. Should we both see both of them on a Saturday just so we can fit them in? I feel that's the way it's going, you know.
There's a lot of times where it's like you see a certain film, you're like, first week.
Gone.
You have to see it first week or else that is going to be gone. And it might be in a couple of screens, but it's like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday and you're like, well, fucking who's seeing that? You ever hear about a movie, think, oh, sounds alright, and then completely forget about it 2 weeks later? That's the streaming effect. When a film gets dumped onto a platform, it dies in the algorithm swamp. No build up, no buzz, just another thumbnail in a sea of endless content. And the messed up thing is studios love it this way. No marketing headaches, no box office disasters, just a quiet, sanitized release straight to your couch. Christopher Nolan dealt with the same shit when Warner Brothers tried to send Tenet straight to HBO Max. He was right, streaming is convenient, but it's also turning movies into disposable background noise.
It's going to sound like a crap use of a time machine, but I'd love to travel back in times, you know, when things weren't publicised and Blade Runner had come out or Empire Strikes Back has come out and it's
Jaws, the original blockbuster.
Jaws, and like, you know, you go to your friend's house who's seen it and like, they're like, oh, you got to see this film, like blah, 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 like, and it's just whispers and, you know, like back in the day where I was reading this autobiography of Bob Dylan changing it to music because he comes from a shit mining town. There was one guy that had an anthology of like all 1930s folk songs and he was the only guy that had that album, so everyone would like go around his house and they spend hours like having listening parties. Like I would love that, do you know what I mean? Like that sounds brilliant to me and I would love to travel back to those times, you know.
There is a weird thing because it's hard to make the argument that having every film, every piece of music, every piece of art virtually on tap via the internet, even when you're on the go because of smartphones nowadays, it's hard to make the argument that that is not obviously better.
Yeah.
But there is a weird, like, there's a reason why diamond companies destroy most of the diamonds they mine every year. It's to keep it precious so the price goes up and the value. As much as you're like, well, I grew up with a fucking iPod and I had every single song in existence that I'd ever heard on there at my fingertips. I used to love it. But, you know, if you grew up in the 60s and you finally could afford enough to buy your first record and you just play it on a loop over and over, you know every song on it off by heart. There probably was something magical about that, and the fact that you had it and you had to actually put it on. Like, do you remember actually having to put a DVD in?
Yeah, my dad's still got VHS.
But like, I don't anymore. I just stream or I find it online, and I have a massive DVD collection still that I don't look at. And every now and then I'll look at it and be like, oh, Good, the Bad and the Ugly. I'm not going to put that in for some reason. If I come across it,
you'll watch it.
I'm ever watching normal telly somehow and I come across a film like that, an hour and a half in, and you've only got 20 minutes before you need to leave anyway. So you just get this weird chunk in the middle, but you're like, I'm fucking enjoying every second of this. You just shut up and watch, and it's great. But DVDs, I just don't do it. It's the same thing with like strolling through streaming sometimes. I feel like it's nearly better just to put on a blind dart, ride a horse backwards and throw a dart at something to pick it, just so you end up watching something, because it's like the choice ends up taxing too much of your mental bandwidth to the point where it kind of sucks away some of the enjoyment by the time you go to watch something. And then it's always kind of in your head of, maybe I should have watched that other thing. Should I fucking give up after 10 minutes? Streaming isn't going anywhere, and why would you want it to? Movie theatres are still fighting to stay alive, and Hollywood is too busy squeezing every last drop out of franchises to give a shit. Movies aren't just content. They're not just something to kill time while you scroll on your phone. They're an experience, a conversation, a moment. They're feelings in a can. It's easy to go along with the algorithm, let it feed you whatever's trending, and these days we don't have that much choice. But if we want great films, if we want movies that actually matter and take chances, that means showing up, watching something unexpected, supporting the stuff that doesn't just play it safe. And don't get me wrong, we're guilty as anyone. But if we don't do something, the future of cinema is going to be endless remakes, algorithm-approved slop, and movies that vanish into obscurity.